BidClips presents Today in Trades, all things sales, technology, and success for entrepreneurs in the home and business service industry. I'm your host, Jim Evans. All right, let's do this. Welcome to Today in Trades, brought to you by BidClips. We have a special guest on our show today. He's actually the co-founder and CEO, or as we call the MF CEO, of BidClips. And he's joining us today. We're going to talk about kind of a gamut of things, primarily follow-ups and the power of follow-ups in the service industry. And, first of all, let's talk about our guest, Austin. I'm going to talk about you first.
Okay,
he's a dear friend. He's the co-founder of BidClips. He's fearless. People have called him intimidating. People say he looks like Elon Musk. All of these things are true.
Is that a compliment?
I said intimidating this morning, right before you got on.
In a good way. But the truth is, he is kind. He's a great guy. He cares about our industry, cares about everybody around him. He's a great leader, great CEO. I mean that. I've had the chance to be his friend for a while now, and I know that because I was digging up some dirt for this podcast, and I found a little picture. Here, let me just share it on the screen. If those of you aren't watching the podcast, that's okay. I'm going to describe what we're looking at here. So, hey, Austin, what's this image that we're looking at right here?
Oh, that's from my birthday when Jim iced me probably like 8-9 times.
What is that? So for those of you not watching the episode, he's kneeling with flip-flops. It looks like plaid shorts, probably bought at Old Navy or the Gap, a bright red collared shirt. He's in way better shape than he is now. And he's drinking a Smirnoff Ice. Is Smirnoff Ice your favorite beer, Austin?
No, I actually don't really enjoy it. It's quite sugary and very difficult to drink quickly, which I had to do many, many unfortunate times.
So then why were you drinking that beer, if we want to call it that? Well, so what happens? How does icing work?
Well, it's an event from long ago where you take a Smirnoff Ice and hide it somewhere in a house, outside, in a duffel bag, in a golf bag, in your shoes. And the person that hides it doesn't go looking for it. And then when someone finds it, they have to get down on one knee and drink it as fast as they can. And I am not very good at drinking it that fast.
Sure. So for our industry, it's kind of like shotgunning, where we drink real beer. Are you you look like you're drinking it pretty proudly there. Were you pretty proud to drink a Smirnoff Ice?
I think I was just more laughing at the absurdity of what was happening that day. So I don't know if it was pride or just laughing on the insides about what was going on at that moment.
So the person that finds it has to drink it?
Yes, the person that finds it has to drink it.
So why would you look for it if you're the one that's going to have to drink it?
Oh, you don't look for it. You want to avoid looking for it.
Oh, so I get it.
You want to look out for it, right?
Got it.
Okay. Is there a space here where I'm about to open something? I'm going to walk into a trap.
Got it.
And so I had snuck away to a liquor store, if you call it that, maybe a grocery store, and we were in New Jersey, and I planted probably 23 of them around the house. Because Austin's we're competitive as friends, and he's a competitive guy, which is what makes him great at business, but it's also makes him a great friend because you can always try to beat him at stuff. And I planted probably 22 probably. So I guarantee you somewhere in your parents' home, there are more Smirnoff Ices. I think your mom will probably just throw it in the trash. So full disclosure, for those of you that are like, why are they talking about Smirnoff Ice? I thought this was a trade podcast. It is, because it's so humiliating. I mean, you're never going to find a glass guy, at a pub drinking a Smirnoff Ice. However, with that being said, I was really hoping on the episode to ice Austin Casey again in front of everyone for the world to see and hear. Well, thanks to the quarantine, that's kind of impossible to get within 6 feet of anybody. So I thought, you know what? We're probably going to be quarantined for a while. What kind of gift could I give Austin So what I did was this same ice that I've been waiting to plant on him for the last probably 6 months, I have it right here. And since we're not in a studio, we're all broadcasting from our freaking homes and the world's probably going to hell in a handbasket, I'm going to drink this ice while we do the podcast because that's how much I care about our guests today. So enough about Smirnoff Ice. They are not an official sponsor, and they never will be, ever, or we will lose listeners. That's where we're at. So enough about ice. We wanted to give you a little background of Austin just as a person. It's fun to tease him. And so here we are today. What are we doing here? Austin, first of all, you heard my little introduction for you, my bromance, but you tell me, how did you end up in the seat you're in today? Give us a little bit of background from you professionally of how you got here.
Yeah, so I moved out here to Montana, it's going on 7 years now, and was doing some consulting at the time, and I ran into Jim here playing soccer. I used to be athletic and thin when I ran track and kind of fast. And so we just hit it off as friends, and he had the business service station, and we got to talking about it, and I ended up taking a look at it and finding ways that we could help make it more efficient, improve operations, improve the technology. And then I guess probably a year or two later, we were sitting in the Stone of Accord together talking about, and Jim turned to me and said, hey, I'd love to be able to, grow Service Station, but also expand into, services that aren't just auto glass. And so we kind of looked around the space and talked about the sales process in the service industry and said, hey, we think there's an opportunity here to create a really cool sales platform and get some, great penetration into not just auto glass, but flat glass and other concepts around the trades industry. And so, we kicked it off, and here we are going on 3 years later, still plugging along and gaining momentum. And it's been a fun ride. We've had put in a lot of work and a lot of effort, but that's how we ended up here. My background, I come from a financial background, so I do tend to lean on, number heavy ideas. I tend to do a lot of data analysis. And that's going to be the main topic of today is not only follow-up, but how can you use data and what are we seeing in the results of our follow-up to use data in order to be able to make decisions around when to follow up, how to follow up, and those types of topics. So.
All right. Thank you. That's awesome. Not as awesome as this Smirnoff tastes.
How's that taste?
But happy birthday and Christmas and quarantine. Oh God! Sorry, Smirnoff. I know you probably do good things as a company, but this is terrible. The Stone of Accord is a pub where I think he actually ordered a Jameson, maybe even a Guinness. So I just got to give Austin some credit that the ice is not a preferable drink of our company.
Not something I would choose, that's for sure.
No, and he does an understatement. I mean, everybody, he brings so many talents. So my grandpa said, don't ever partner with someone unless they can bring money you can't get a hold of, or they bring a skill set that you can't acquire. I think that's important for our listeners. If you have partners, you're looking for partners, really try to focus on what you do best. Those of you that know me, I kissed math bye-bye years ago. Customer service, podcasts, getting Mickey pumped up about life. That's what I do. Austin also does those things, but he does a great job of breaking down a business, breaking down the numbers of a business, how many times we see businesses live and die by just knowing your numbers. It's fantastic. So he's going to deliver a lot for us over the coming years. Before we dive into those results, let's talk a little bit more about BidClips. You alluded to it. Tell us about BidClips, the tool, the company, and how it can help listeners. They make this podcast possible. What is it?
Yeah, so BidClips is a sales platform, primarily a sales platform for the home and service industries. We focus on giving customers the best experience possible. Customer experience is really a buzzword at this time. It's been used for, probably a decade now. And how do you really focus on the customer and give them a good experience? And I think in the home and service industries, home and auto service industries, it's easy to get lost in the operations a little bit and say, if I run a good operation, I'm guaranteed to run a good and profitable business. And I think that can be true if you do run a tight operation, but then you always have to ask yourself, could there be more? And so our platform is focused on that more aspect. How do we take that sales process, that upfront customer experience, and how do we, BidClips as a company, through the years of learnings at Service Station and the years of customer whispering that Jim has done, create this platform that allows shops to deliver a premier customer experience with little effort. And then they can take that customer experience and turn it into repeat customers, turn it into long accounts, turn it into really great sales, and hopefully increase their overall top line. And then if you're increasing your top line and as well as running an efficient operation, you win. And so that's our goal, is to help shops and providers out there win, especially given this current difficult time. So.
Fantastic. Thank you. So for those of you that want to know more about that, bidclips.com. I understand we also have a bid blog, some blog posts and posts specifically around this topic we're going to talk about today. Where do we go to read that and to consume that?
Yeah, so you can get to the blog via our website. So just go to bidclips.com and search for the link to the blog, and you can click on the blog. I would say the URL here, but it's it's going to be long. It's www. Bidblog.
No, this is the service industry. You start with HTTPS : colon is the button in the top right. That's why Mickey and I are here. We're gonna keep this real, listeners, to the non-tech savvy. Our tech is with our hands right here. So Austin helps make that technology also. So great introduction. Please go check out the blog for sure, and notes on this podcast if you'd like. So I'm going to have so Mickey's going to kind of guide and ask some of these questions around follow-ups, and we're going to dive in. There's a couple key parts of this industry. I'm talking everything: carpet cleaning, remodeling, flooring, window washing. It doesn't really matter. The service industry, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit for profit and for growth. But before we dive into that specific topic of follow-ups, what else have you seen in this space? What surprised you about service coming in from a different kind of industry? Because sometimes that fresh set of eyes teaches us a lot. What have you seen, just starting at that kind of high level?
Well, one of the first things I did, actually one of the first things that we did, is we sat down and we did what's called an empathy map of the entire customer journey, right? Again, as a platform, we're focused on the customer experience, the customer journey, and that's why, in BidClips, when you guide your ISRs or when you guide a customer, it's called a journey template. It's the template for the journey that you need to guide everyone on. And so I guess when we went through that empathy map, I was really surprised at how many opportunities there are for improvements in the industries, right? As a consumer, as you sit back and you think about getting service yourself, there's a couple things that pop up. One, it's a very complex industry with a lot of moving parts and a lot of moving variables. It's not something that can be done virtually. It has to be, it's an on-site type of work. You need to have your hands, you need to have a location, whether it be the customer's location or whether it be your own shop. And in that complexity, there's a lot of opportunities for efficiency gains and a lot of opportunities for improvements on how to interact with customers, how to deliver better service, et cetera. So through that empathy map, it was very revealing to the efforts that all of our providers and shops put in on a day-to-day basis to run their operations. And then as well as the sort of lack of use of technology to make some of these areas better. And then, the second leap that I made was I said, okay, what does this industry look like? Who am I talking to?
Oh, looks like we lost him for a second there.
Cool. Well, we'll be editing this part out. Maybe not. Maybe we could just talk about it. Well, that was cool. Glad to know that the industry is going well. He'll be dialing back in here shortly. Zoom's been acting weird that way. I think it's because the whole
Yesterday it
entire
did
world
too.
is using Zoom for everything.
I think so too.
All right, we are back again. That damn Carol Baskins just somehow crashed Austin's computer. For those of you that don't know what that is, that's the lady on Tiger King. Holy balls, Tiger King is awesome. So computer restarted. You know, this is the downside of trying to do a podcast with freaking COVID-19 all up in our business. So computers restarted. Austin is back with us again. What a great podcast we had going. So let's pick it right back up where we left off. Continue, Austin.
Yeah. So sorry about that. The virus is getting everybody. My computer actually doesn't have a virus. We don't use that word in the computer world, Jim. But
sure, Carol Baskin is a virus.
She came over and ran over and hit the button. I actually haven't watched the show. So I think I need to pick that one up here whenever my 3 kids, all under the age of 5, let us breathe a little bit. So
yeah, for real. Plus, the whole world's using Zoom at the same time, so we got to give it a little grace here.
Yeah. What I was talking about was, you had asked Jim, what were the things that I found that, surprised me or that I, uncovered within looking at the service industry. And I think when you and I went through that empathy mapping exercise, and then, I was talking about how the next step was to look at this, profile of who are service providers, right? And one of the things that shocked me that I brought to your attention and to the attention of, some of our other constituents is that service providers, well, I think everyone knows that there's the 4-to-1 for every 4 that retire, only 1 is replacing them. So there is a dearth of talent out there, and there's a real need. And then the second piece was that there is that many that are retiring, and when I did when I went to the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics and said, service workers compared to the average age of service workers compared to other industries out there, they're the second oldest behind U.S. postal workers. So you look at this and you're like, we have this labor gap. That's getting worse. And then you have, all of these service providers that are reaching retirement age, and there's no one to come up behind them and do this work and replace it. So, there has to be a couple things that need to happen. There has to be some efficiency gains. We have to get younger people interested in the trades. We have to show that it's a profitable industry that you don't have to spend your life doing and not make anything and not have a retirement, and demonstrate how technology can help improve everyone's life all around. And so I think that when we set out on this journey, that was another one of our goals, and is to bring in youth and to demonstrate that it doesn't have to be the way that it was for so long. So, yeah. I
think that's great. My husband and I talk about that all the time because he's in the auto industry as well. He's an automotive painter, and he talks about that all the time, about how when his generation and the generation, before him, when they leave, there are just no young kids out of high school that are coming into his industry looking for work. And it's who's going to take over all of those jobs if nobody's trying to get into them? And I think it's a big problem in a lot of industries.
Yeah. And, there's 2 sides to that, because as our industries, we just complain about it. Well, there's no youth coming up. Well, that's not the answer. The answer then to Austin's point is, well, what kind of efficiencies? We all know that we waste time and we waste resources. Mm-hmm. Some of us don't have the education or the resources to try to get efficient. And more importantly, we're always so busy. I'm just tired of hearing how busy we were. And with the COVID stuff, we're, you better be busy. We better be busy making our businesses better. And with that, man, if you guys are listening and you're kind of like, man, should I be a postal worker or get into the trades? I'm going to tell you the trades are probably a little more long-term lucrative. So, not crapping on postal workers. I love them all except for ours because he doesn't like us and the dog chased him away. But that's another podcast for another time. Go into the trades. If you're listening to this session and you're thinking, man, holy cow, this world is going to be so much different. There is stuff to do after this all gets over. There are buildings to maintain that are only growing, population's only growing. And with this whole situation, what a chance to start over, to learn something. If you're sitting at home right now playing Call of Duty, hop over, watch some YouTube videos, podcasts, betterment videos. What we're doing here, we are showing you that there is an opportunity for somebody like Austin Casey to come out of New York, to come out of Villanova Business School and intern to the trades, says there's clearly a market here. Mickey, I know you probably have some questions about Austin, so you can dive in and fire at him here before we move into the meat.
Yeah, Austin, I don't know you very well, and I'm guessing most of our listeners don't either. So I'm kind of wondering what your background is, where you grew up, what your parents did for a living, and if that kind of influenced where you are now in life and what you chose as your career path.
Yeah. So it's interesting. My dad has always been a serial entrepreneur. He has an interesting background. I like to give him a lot of props here and there, especially because he's been so supportive of Jim and I in this venture. And interestingly enough, he's done a number of ventures and eventually landed on he runs a computer IT consulting firm and they do software development. And one of his early projects was actually in the Wall Street space. And his early project was in the Computer World Smithsonian. I think the piece of code is still there. Museum as one of the first examples of cloud computing in 1989. So
that's impressive.
So he's a special guy. He's a unique guy, and he's been really supportive of this venture. And my mom is a lovely, lovely woman, and she works very, very hard. My youngest brother actually has cerebral palsy, and so as a stay-at-home mom of
that's
3 kids.
Job.
Yeah, it's a full-time job with who has a husband who's working a lot, starting his own businesses. So she put herself through a lot, and I think just I come from my dad's one of 11, so I come from a very large Irish Catholic family, and we all just have this strong work ethic. We even if no matter what the circumstances, good, bad, or otherwise, we're always going to be working and pushing through it and grinding. And I think that has really instilled a lot of values in me, and my siblings and the rest of my family. And then, coming out of high school, I actually wanted to be a doctor. My favorite subjects, my favorite number one subject is chemistry, followed quickly by biology. So I don't do that. I didn't go into that, but what I do to satiate the need to do chemistry is cook. I cook a lot. So I really enjoy cooking because it reminds me of a chemistry process. And then, my dad was a bio major, so he went pre-med, and then him and I had a conversation, and I'll never forget it. I ran track throughout college, and we were standing by a track, and he said, just go into business, and then you can hire the people that you need to do the skills that you need. So that's the path I took. I went to Villanova Business School, graduated with 2 majors and a minor there, one in finance, one in accounting, and then a minor in entrepreneurship. And then took the traditional path, left, went to Wall Street, worked for Morgan Stanley in corporate strategy for 5 years. And, as I sat there and was, looking at the work that I was doing, it's a lot of building spreadsheets and coming to your boss and saying, here's my recommendation for the business, and this is why. And there's a lot of justification and building presentations and all these efforts that never felt like I was actually building anything. You do a lot of work, but you're not building something. And so I just had this itch that I felt like I needed to scratch. And I think a lot of our listeners probably feel that need to use their hands and to build something and to contribute in a way that's not so intangible. So I needed something tangible. So I left. I didn't actually leave for that exact purpose. Brenda, my wife, she wanted to come back to Montana. So we came back to Montana. And while I was here, I did some consulting and, kind of milled around figuring out exactly, what's the next path is going to be. And then that, leads us back in the beginning of the story where we talked to Jim about, met him playing soccer, et cetera. And then that gave me the opportunity to, build something. And here we are building.
And create BidClips.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you're more of the tech side and the financial side, whereas a lot of the people that BidClips works with is the labor side and the shop side.
Yeah, I would say that I can look at a process or look at a business and figure out how to model it. I think that's probably my strength. And then if you can figure out how to
really work without the other. You have to have them, together to make a successful company. I think that's really important.
Wait, you mean driving around and just chasing the noise isn't modeling a business? So basically, that was a really amazing way of saying we have a valuable setup here. Those of you that listen, driving around in your van, we need to hone in on some of this mind share. And BidClips is a company that is split really nicely. We have everyone on our team that have put in shower enclosures, auto glass, the work. We've also put in the time for the brain power. And so I'm excited for Austin to dive into some of that skill set that he has, because let's be honest, everyone listening, other than going to our accountant once a quarter, maybe, for most of us, and then hoping we're profitable, that's not going to work. It's not going to work. So it's time to look at our businesses. And what we thought would be best in this podcast is to actually go straight to what's the first area with the most ROI sitting there. And that's follow-ups. And
Jim, Jim, for people like me that are not in the industry, what is an ROI?
Oh my gosh, I sound smart finally. That's a return on investment.
There you go.
In the trades, guys, we put time in. We don't value it. we'll do a trade for 10 years. Maybe we have a high school education, but we don't see that time as valuable. And something that's important is, what are we putting our time into, and is it creating value for us? Yes, on this call, most of us aren't doing this for the money. We do it to take care of people. We care about people. We care about our trade. But we also need to be able to retire. We need to be able to have a business that stands on its own. It needs to be able to be passed on or sold. That's why this podcast is for entrepreneurs. We need to be able to move the young people into, this is a great job. And for those of you starting a business, or you're going to start a business because you got laid off because of COVID, this is the stuff you need to be thinking about as you set up your career early on. So I'm going to take a sip again for Charlene, because Austin telling me his background, his mother is amazing. So I'm going to take a drink for Charlene. God, this is terrible. And so still drinking my Smirnoff for those of you that just joined us on the podcast. I don't know why you joined halfway in, but that's cool. So now let's dive into follow-up. So we feel like follow-ups, there's 100 ways to make this industry better, but follow-ups, we have come off of 5 years of a strong industry. I started my career back after a little thing called the recession in 2000. Well, I started it before that, but I really took my roots about 2006 to 2011. I was in homes, doing estimates, making sales, putting in shower enclosures, installing windshields, although I sucked at it, so they moved me to sales. And I'm doing this work. And I'm going to tell you guys, I loved to be a salesperson. I loved being an estimator. I love solving problems. But I'm as guilty as anybody listening to this. 4 out of 10 jobs didn't ever get closed. And then they would sit in a file. In fact, I'm so old that I had one of those metal little, it's a metal portfolio that all of us have. We put our work orders in, and we put our little pen in, and we carry it in our vans. Like most of our listeners probably still use it. They're like, "What are you talking about? That's my laptop." Well, I would take those and I put the missed sales into that thing, and it would come back to the office. I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to call and check up on that customer." A day would pass, a couple days. Well, now it's awkward. I'm like, "Well, I don't want to call them." I told them I'd call them back. I didn't. And they end up just creating this stack. And nod your head in your van if you're listening to this and you have a stack of unsold jobs. And I bet you a Smirnoff, everybody, that you are saying to yourself, well, they went somewhere else because of price. Well, Mickey, let's talk about what it's like being a consumer on the other side. They
probably went somewhere else because they didn't get a phone call back from them with either an estimate or just a follow-up call back. I know for me, being a mom of 3 boys, I'm so busy that if I take the time out of my day to call and get a quote from somewhere, I'm not going to have the time to call them back because most likely I'm going to forget, or I've already made that call and I've probably called a couple of places because I want the best price or the best service. And so I leave it on them, and whoever's going to call me back and give me the best service and get me, the information that I need and put in the time, that's who I'm going to go with because I know that company is going to take care of me. But if I don't ever hear from them again, I'm going to forget I even called them.
Fascinating. So, how many people will you call sometimes to get an estimate, like on a big project?
A few, we had to get our water heater replaced, probably 6 months ago. That's a pretty expensive thing. I think we spent like $1,400 on it. And, that's a lot of money for us. And for most people, I think that's a lot of money. So I probably called 6 or 7 places. And, I want to know who's coming into my home because I have 3 children, like I said, and I want to know that I'm not getting ripped off and that they're along the same price as the rest of them. It's not like I went with the cheapest one just because it was the cheapest. I want to know that I'm getting the best service and a good price as well.
So what I'm hearing from you, and I know you pretty well, you weren't just cared about that $1,400 number. Right?
No.
That wasn't the biggest, that wasn't the entire package. Secondly, you weren't going to scream at the person that called you back to just check in, right? Mm-mm. And thirdly, how many of them texted you or emailed you or hit you in any other form other than a phone call?
2.
And did you purchase from one of them or not? It's okay if you didn't. You did. Okay.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And then probably 3 weeks later, I was over at my neighbor's house right across the street, and we're just, having a glass of wine and visiting. And she starts telling me how her hot water heater has been taking a dump, and she hasn't had a shower in 2 days because it's on the fritz. And I said, that's crazy. We just replaced ours. Our houses are built at the same time. We're in the same neighborhood. And she's like, I cannot get a hold of anybody. And I said, let me text this guy right now because he left me his cell phone number and see if he can come out. He was at her house 30 minutes later looking at her water heater.
Fantastic. And so by doing the one text follow-up, he got presumably $2,800.
Yeah.
And then, that guy, and let alone that's a text from his phone. I mean, you probably didn't get a video. You didn't get explaining that he's safe, that he's going to keep your house from disease, the things that it's going to take to just get into people's homes. That's another podcast topic. So thank you for sharing that. That's a great insight. Sometimes in this space, we get all nerdy about our businesses. It's so good to hear from real customers. And so let's dive in, Austin. Let's get into some of the numbers. Let's get into that topic of follow-ups from what you have seen, because I wanted to address how I feel as a service provider. Mickey just laid out how she feels as a customer. But you know what? Feeling is the most important in making decisions. However, we sometimes don't step back. We don't have the data. We don't know the data. And then we think we know the data, but we really don't. And that's the worst. That's the hardest to overcome. So take it away on follow-ups. What have you seen from your perspective?
I think Mickey's, when I listen to Mickey, if you go and read our first blog post here on follow-up, and we're going to have another one coming out, focusing on the data, and maybe even turn it into a white paper that has some really interesting charts and graphs and results that we're seeing from our follow-up processes. But, in that first post, one thing we talked about, we talked about the power of follow-up, and we had 6 main powers lumped into 3 categories. And the first category was building relationships. That idea that a follow-up really cements the relationship because it gives you an opportunity to do 2 things. One, Mickey's going through a challenging time. She maybe has a lot of questions. Maybe she's a little scared. She doesn't know what the price is going to be. She doesn't know what the price means. And I think, in our first podcast with Abel talking about customer service, he mentioned empathy. And empathy is paramount to everything that is done in the service industry. And so, it builds that relationship. So that text message or that phone call or that email is that follow-up gives you an opportunity to, again, address that customer's concern with empathy. And that builds that relationship. And then the second piece to that is exactly what Mickey said. They demonstrated a caring towards her. She knew that she'd be taken care of. And it strengthens that relationship by saying, I know that this service provider, you are I am at the forefront of your mind, right? You may be busy, you may be installing, but when you get back to your home, when you get back to your truck, when you get back to your shop, you sit down and think about, me as a customer that has been struggling or that needs something addressed, and you take the time to reach out. And that demonstrates a level of caring that helps really build and cement those relationships. And I think those are two immensely powerful things about follow-up that are not so data-driven, but are more intangibly based. It's about the feeling of the service that you're receiving, that customer experience. So it's
hugely, yeah.
So I'm listening, and I'm a provider. I'm a flooring guy or a carpet cleaner. What if you don't know what to say? What if you don't know how to say it? What are some things you can do to get follow-ups to happen, to get over that bridge?
Well, I think you can do a number of things, right? There are a lot of resources out there, right, that you can go to, and you can say, okay, how are other people doing follow-ups? There's plenty of email programs that will give you a language that you can put into a follow-up or into an email that you could send out automatically, or you could send out a text message automatically. So, for example, in BidClips, what we do is, we have the ability to build a follow-up process where we can send out emails or text messages periodically. We typically right now follow the 1 hour, 1 day, 7 day, 30-day process. And then it's said for you, right? And you give the customer a call to action. And I think that's the most important thing is when you're calling a customer or reaching back out to a customer, you have to remember that what you are is a storyteller. And in any great story, right, you have 5 pieces to a story. You have an introduction, you have a rising action, you have a climax, you have a falling action, and you have the conclusion. So what follow-up really is it's what happens after you deliver a price. So if you're building up your value, talking to the customer, you've made a great introduction, and then, you get to the climax and you say, here's the price, and then you stop, it's very hard to get to that conclusion. It's very hard, by saying I gave the price, that's it. It's now on the customer. You lose that falling action that we call follow-up, which is that process of taking that price and pushing I shouldn't say pushing, guiding the customer to the conclusion that you want, which is a closed sale. And if you approach it from that perspective, then you'll naturally know what to say. Pretend that you're telling your story to your kids, right? Sit down with your wife and say, what is my value, right? And this is the second category. The second category of the power of follow-up is you give your value proposition. So if you can sit down next to your friend or next to your wife or to your kids and say, as a service provider, this is the value that I bring to you, then that's all that you need. And that's really what it comes down to, is you being able to communicate across to them what your value is. And you can do that in many forms. You could do that through a direct phone call. You could do that through an automated email. You could do that through an automated text message, or even a canned message. That's one thing that, again, in our platform that we do is give you that opportunity to follow up automatically.
That's so powerful.
Explain to the listeners what a canned message, what that is.
Yeah, so it'd be something that you've pre-created, right? So if you aren't so certain that you can speak right in a moment, right, you could create, in our platform, you can say, okay, I want to message this customer, and you can have a pre-selected set of messages that are loaded up that you can then send across without having to retype it.
Saving a ton of time, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this creates consistency. What you said was really powerful. So I want everyone to listen up and hear that a little bit more. We have secretaries. We have this stuff. And I hear so many times, well, I tell them to do it. How do you hold them accountable? How do you, it's my wife, it's my mother-in-law is my secretary, and that's true. How do you do it? Well, again, there are programs out there. BidClips has it interlaced, and create some automation. Write it one way as an owner, and then make sure that is the message that goes out to everybody, whether it's through email or through text. And that's a really powerful thing Austin just said. If you don't have your story, reach out to us, reach out to your marketer, reach out to your SEO provider. Help them help you write a story about your business. Some of the best service providers I know, they do a fantastic job, but they're sometimes really humble. If you're listening to this call and we're all pretty humble in this industry, but they're not proud to talk about themselves. So it's hard to talk about yourself. Have your friend, have your family, call one of us. We'll help you to write a story about your business. Because once you have that down to what Austin said, it's easier to then take that and then send it back out. So whether that's a little YouTube video where you talk about what you can do, bullet points, etc. So dig into the resources. This is going to be very important moving forward. The other thing that Mickey didn't touch on, and it's important, is that, Mickey, do you sometimes just have to budget for a service? I mean, every time you call to get a price, do you just immediately buy?
No, yeah, we definitely have to budget for everything, and we have to have that little, hopefully we have a little bit of savings to do the stuff like that. Our washing machine went out last year, and it took us 3 weeks to be able to get the money, saved up to be able to replace it. And like I said, I have 3 kids. I mean, it was insane the amount of laundry that had built up by that time. So yeah, you definitely have to. You can't just buy the cheapest one. You need one that's going to work. And
if it takes 3 weeks, everybody, then you really need to make sure you have a follow-up that gets to Mickey on week 2, and week 3. And worst case scenario, Mickey just texts back, I had it taken care of. The other guy was nicer. He didn't smell as bad as you did. I'm just kidding. But I mean, you never know the reasons. It's not always price. So, that's fantastic. So, yeah. Wow. Follow-ups.
I'll interject here, Jim, a little bit. There's this idea that price is the deciding factor. And really it's actually value that's the deciding factor. And I said, make sure you define your value proposition, but what value really is what you bring, for that price, right? Mm-hmm. So I maybe have the same price as the guy next to me, but I have a little bit more of something, right? Like I do just something a little bit differently or a little bit better. It's like that secret sauce that really drives your business forward. And it's important that you're talking to the right people when you're talking about your value, right? So if you sit there and you say, okay, here's my price and here's the value that I bring with it. If we look at Mickey and I asked her, who in your home makes the decision at the end of the day, she'd probably say, well, it's a combination of my husband and I, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably common for most people. Is that correct, Mickey?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
And when we look at personas of consumers, there's different ideas, right? There's the buyer, there's the decider. The buying process goes through 5 to 6 different buying personas. And in small transactions, when you're buying a book, you're both the buyer and the decider. You write the check and you make that decision. What makes service so complex is that you can have multiple deciders, or maybe you have one decider. Maybe at the end of the day, Mickey has that one decision-making process. She says, I like Jim the best. I'm going with Jim. And her husband says, okay, I will write the check, right? And Mickey's the decider, her husband's the buyer. But in a lot of these, it's a really complex back and forth decision-making process. And that process just takes time. And it's that idea of staying in front of people with your value proposition and being in front of the right person with the right message, talking to that decider. making sure that you're checking off all the boxes on their needs, that will really win you jobs. And that's what follow-up does. It gives you that opportunity to once again get in front of that deciding person, so that you can win that job and with a reasonable value proposition.
Yeah, speaking on that, I think that's a huge part of why follow-ups are so important, is that you can't always, as a customer, just because I don't book that day that you gave me that price, or even within that same week, that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna have it done. That's why it's so important for companies to keep following up even weeks after, because of all those different deciding factors, like you were just talking about, talking to your husband about it, deciding what's the best type of, thing that you're gonna choose. Like I said, the water heater, the washer and dryer, things like that. There's so many different deciding factors that sometimes it does. And with people have busy lives, it does take, 2 to 3 weeks sometimes. And so to have follow-ups keep coming even, in those 2 or 3 weeks instead of just the very next day, I think that's super important as well.
Absolutely. And let's talk about what's going to hit our listeners pretty heavy too. If all of you sit down and maybe do this, write out the value that you've already invested in those missed opportunities. Mm-hmm. Just write that out. And then ask yourself, as you're sitting here, as we are all sitting here, I commend all of you that are out on the front lines. You're right in the middle of all of this. You're keeping our houses safe. You're fixing floods. You're doing mitigation. I can't thank you enough for putting yourself there. But we are going to see a change in the way we do business. So if you're sitting here listening to the podcast and you are thinking to yourself, I wonder how much I have, go back to that stack, go back, look at it, reach out to a company like BidClips, reach out to your marketer, your advisor, your spouse, your manager, and figure out a way to say, look, can we go capture 10% of what's sitting here by simply just representing ourselves? I'm a huge fly fisherman, those of you that know. If you miss a fish on your first presentation, straight back in and represent the fly again. It doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. It doesn't even mean that your product was bad. You don't, let's be very clear here. Don't just assume it was price or they're just kicking the tires. You invested, in most cases, 15, 20, 30 minutes. Well, Austin said earlier, 1 out of 4, right? I mean, we're not replacing the workers. So you don't have time to go around and miss estimates anymore. And you certainly don't have time to not follow up on them. And so, again, I really encourage you to read Austin's blog, read the white paper. I know it's a lot, some bathroom reading. You might want to just read on your phone while you're doing your business. But it's so important to value it, to look at the numbers. Man, so many times I've made terrible business decisions because I was going off of feeling and I wasn't going off of fact and I wasn't going off of what really is the truth. And so, again, if you need help telling a story, get help. If you need help valuing it. But, I know most of you are sitting there right now with your little laptop, your little, my little binder, and you've got some quotes in there. So, we really encourage you guys to take this seriously, to all of us, take this seriously. Not just for our businesses. These are we're entrepreneurs. We're trying to grow our service business, but more importantly, do it for Mickey, do it for the customers, do it for the people that liked you, actually really appreciated you, but then just forgot about you. Don't be forgotten. So very good. Very good.
And Austin, in BidClips, a lot of shops just get too busy, like Jim was saying, to be able to sit down and make that phone call or do that follow-up. But in BidClips, a nice thing is that you can just automate all of those. Is that correct?
Yep, correct.
And it's already set up for you.
Yeah, correct. It comes set up, and then you can change it. You can ask us to modify it. You can add more follow-ups, less follow-ups. It's as a customizable platform. It's really up to you to use it to whatever power you really want to. And I think that's a nice segue into saying, okay, well, if I want to set up this follow-up process, or I want to have follow-ups, it's nice to say, okay, well, I think the next question that most people ask is, well, I understand that they're needed. I get it, right? And Jim asked a great question. Well, what if you don't know what to say? And I think the next questions after that are, well, when do I follow up? How much is too much? Am I bothering the customer? Are they not engaging with me? What's the best method? And is it a phone call? Is it a text message? Is it an email? And those are some of the more data-driven questions that we're also looking to answer here.
And most importantly, we're parents. Mickey and I are parents, and when Austin's a parent, your kids have not heard you till they say, "Yeah, I got it, Dad." And we think that our one little email probably went to trash, by the way, our one little email they got. I'm sorry, we're in a world where Amazon emails me probably 10 times a day. I'm okay with it because I like Amazon. So if you're
now we're in a world where our kids' teachers email us 10 times a day because we're
yeah. I mean, people do not hear you till they say, "I heard you, thank you,
Yep.
unsubscribe." They're not mad. So as a service industry, we get so afraid of one call. It's got to take 15 calls. And what we found with some of our clients that have used BidClips, and again, we're not just plugging BidClips. If you find your follow-up process, we've made it easy. BidClips makes this show possible, but follow-ups have to be done. This is an industry problem, and we have to be educated. And that's what we're all about here at this podcast, is to educate. Each episode, we want to deliver something that will help your business, will help you. As you're driving around in the van, we want you to listen to us and to connect with us. We're really excited. We're really excited to see what the future is going to look like. And instead of trying to complain about people not coming into the industry, let's do better with our industry. And so unless you have some more questions for Austin, Mickey, this is an unbelievable opportunity. Austin's a very busy individual, and to take this time was really important to us. And so if any of you need anything, visit us at bidclips.com, and we're always available for you.
Do you guys want some quick numbers and quick facts here?
We'd love some.
A data-driven podcast, so we can go through some of these numbers here lately.
You should anyways, because I still have about a tenth. I'm not good at math. I don't know if this is a tenth of the beer to finish of my Smirnoff Ice I have to finish. So yeah, I would love that actually.
Okay, well, so little interesting fact that we see. So, one of the pieces of data that we track is who books the actual job. Does the customer book it online, or does the provider book it? And one thing that we notice is that if you give customers an online option to book a job, they will book on average 1.5 days, really 1 to 2 days earlier than if they have to call you back or you call them. And that's really powerful. What that means is that if you're out in the field, if you're writing things down on a piece of paper, you should always be thinking, I need to get this in front of the customer in a digital form. Because that process will get you down payments earlier, get you scheduled earlier. Imagine if you took every day in the year and got a job booked 1 day earlier. You could, grow your business pretty significantly.
That adds up. That adds up huge. I'll never forget. My dad used to always say when we were growing up, one extra windshield, just one extra job a day, and he would extrapolate that out to the year. Just one extra a day helps us to beat our stretch goal. I mean, we're not talking like little chunks go a long way. So that was really an important concept. If you weren't paying attention, that Austin just said that you don't have to go tackle the elephant by the horn. You take a few at a time. You make sure you get in front of them. You take every missed quote. You do it right there in your van if possible, or as soon as you can. You'll see an amazing amount of opportunity fill up your books.
And you're saying, Austin, that the customers can book from their phones.
Yeah, phones, computers.
And pay.
Yeah, exactly. Book and pay, right? So that's what the BidClips process is, right? We give you that ability to book and pay from any device. And by doing that, customers, book at a significant rate, and they're booking earlier than if they're trying to call you back or you're trying to call them. And think about it. If I have the option to do it right here rather than call, I'll do it. And then not only that, if I do try and call or you try and call me, we play phone tag. Ooh, I don't recognize that number. I'm not going to pick that one up. I got a voicemail. Oh, I'll call them back. I'll call them back tomorrow, right? You have this back and forth that takes about 24 hours to get something booked. Whereas if you give them an immediate option, it happens immediately. And that saves you a day per job, which is, honestly, it's more than a day. It's closer to 2, but it's pretty significant.
Yeah. And, and if you don't have, and that's where you can leverage your local website. I mean, that's the nice thing about BidClips. It lands on your website, right? You can leverage your own stuff to make this a possibility. People are going to take the path of least resistance. They don't want to call you either. I have PTSD trying to call a service company. I have to text my plumber. I'll leave him nameless. He will not pick up his phone. I don't like that. Like, just make it easy for me to say, yes, I'm good with that. Thank you for the price. I appreciate you. It's not just new business, everybody. This is for repeat customers as well.
So Austin, you've done studies on this within BidClips, right? Like, how much money would you say is left on the table in a lot of companies?
I don't have a specific number. I don't have a hard number. What I do know is that when our customers do use the automated follow-up process that we have in place, they see a 12% increase in their sales. So on $1 million shop, that's $120,000 annually, right? On a $50,000 shop, you're looking at $6,000. So you are, by not following up, you're, leaving a pretty significant amount of your business on the table. And then if you throw in phone call callbacks, you can see a 23% increase. So the combination of phone calls and automated follow-ups can have a significant impact to any business.
My early days doing sales back, I spent more of my life in a recession than a boom or bull economy, everybody. So this is kind of my jam, right? To make it through. And customers really appreciate great service when things are tough. It's a good chance to really, really take care of people. We used to have to do a handwritten phone call log. And I used to just hate the term, you can book jobs on your third to fifth follow-up call back in the day. And I hated it. And you came out of Morgan Stanley, Austin, with your early career. You hear that all the time. It's the people that make it are the ones that will reach out 3 to 5 extra times on their leads. And I used to always just want to prove it wrong. But when we tracked it, it's extremely true that it's not the first follow-up. It's not the second. Oftentimes it's the third to the fifth. That's when people are like, they care enough about my business. And whether that was an outbound sales call or a missed shower enclosure in the field, an estimate, or just a price on an auto glass. I've done all of that. It's true. We have to get in front of people. It doesn't mean you badger them. It just means if you care enough to check in a few times, you care enough about their business. I mean, I take it like, Austin and I are friends, and if I'm going to go have him over for dinner and he calls me and cancels like 10 minutes before, I don't just go, oh, bummer. I immediately am like, hey, what's going on, man? Are you okay? Is the family okay? What can I do to make this happen? Should we reschedule? I care enough to follow up. That's once. Yeah, I don't know. We're working through we're figuring some stuff out with like the kids and childcare and stuff. Okay, I'll check in with you. Hang up. And like 20 minutes later, I'm like, okay, what did you end up finding out about the childcare? Because I want to hang out with my friend. So if we'll do that with friends, if we will follow up 2 to 5 times to like make something good happen, why wouldn't we do that with our customers who, for a lot of us, they are our friends? Your enemies certainly aren't buying your stuff. So you got to treat your customers like friends. We got to follow up. We got to stop seeing it like a sales pitch or a pestering. It's a touch. It's a check-in. It's I care enough about you that I'm not going to forget about you. So really good points. And really good data. Thank you, Austin. That's powerful stuff. And I didn't want to know the value of the number of missed sales in the last 3 years on service companies' desks. And we're always like, well, we're too busy. Well, are you busy with the most profitable work? Or are you just busy with the noisy work? Are you busy with the customers that were worth earning their business because it was profitable work? Or are you just handling all the cheap work because that's the easy fruit? You can answer that. I'm sure of our listeners, we have the whole gamut. But it's a good question to ask ourselves.
I am interested on the number side of things, though. If you want to, if you had any other numbers that you could share with us, Austin.
Yeah, so I just have I have a couple more here. Just a couple of little quick tidbits. So, I think through the service station side, we all know this a little bit. I think everyone in the industry knows this. The most calls for a service we get are on Mondays. And interestingly enough, the average customer, from the time that they view a bid to the time that they book it, if it's pretty close to immediate, it takes them about 29 hours to book a service, right? So from the time they open a bid to the time they close it and then go back to rebook it, it takes about a day and change. So what that has led us to realize is that Tuesdays, so here's a fun little tidbit, Mondays have the greatest hot calls for service. They also have the greatest booking rates compared to the rest of the weeks for phone calls. But Tuesdays are actually the most significant days for customers booking online. And on both sides, customers calling a provider calling a customer, or a customer booking online, the time frames are the best time frames are between noon and 2 p.m. local time. So whatever your local time is, between noon and 2 p.m. On a Tuesday is really when you want to get a customer. And it's actually a little bit about a day after you send them a bid. And so what we found, right, is we have this hour follow-up, we have a day follow-up, we have 7 days, we have 30 days. And if you take your whole universe of jobs that you're going to close, within that first hour, you're going to get 73% of them closed. So interacting with a customer in their home, sending them a bid, that first hour is really crucial. And then this first to second hour, you kind of see this little spike of 7% growth in the amount of jobs that you're going to get. So that 1 hour follow-up is really good for getting customers to engage with you and really good at closing. The 1 day follow-up, we also see a lot of engagement. Customers will click on it, they'll open a bid, they'll look at a bid. But that's the point where the 29 hours grows a little bit to be, about 40 hours. So really you're looking at like day 3 here to following up with customers. So 1 hour is really effective at closing at that time. 1 day is really effective at getting engagement and then closing, a day or two later. And then actually after day 6, we don't really see a lot of benefit in automated follow-ups. We see a lot of engagement, right? Customers will still click the bid. They'll still look at it, but they don't book as often after day 6. And that makes sense if you think about it, right? So day 5, day 1 is Monday's the most common, right? So I go in on Monday and I call and I need my service. By day 6, I've hit Saturday. So now I'm at the weekend, then day 7, Sunday, and then by Monday, I've forgotten about it. Mm-hmm. So, day 7 and day 30, the follow-up isn't as effective. It's good at getting engagement, but it's not as effective as getting customers to close. So if you're sitting there being like, okay, when do I call? When do I send a message, et cetera? You really want to start calling the Monday after someone, Monday or Tuesday after someone you've sent a bid, right? So give them that 7-day period and begin calling them, because after that 6-day time period, phone calls become really effective. So just
to give some context around this, guys, these numbers are focused around service work and repair. You can extrapolate them to most industries, most service companies, and so it's for most of us listening. That's our jam. The $200 to $1,000 price point. Stats. And what's funny is, and I know those of you listening are feeling the same way I am. We know this in our gut. We know what he's saying is true. So to have a statistician, to have somebody come in, run the detailed numbers, and Austin knows his numbers, to run the numbers and see that it validates what we know is to be true. I just feel like the big hurdle is to be able to find that program like BidClips to get your automation going. Take that step now to say, let's do this because we know it's going to work. And if some of you have bigger projects like the 10,000 to like 30,000 price point, it's even more important to make sure those follow-up cadences go out a little further, because the bigger the project, the bigger the relationship buying cycle can be. So you can adapt it to your industry as you're listening to this, but just know all industry wide, that first hour is so powerful. I used to hate that because it was like, well, I don't want to be pestering them. Well, Mickey said she called 6. So that takes about an hour, right? Mickey, to call everybody. Mm-hmm. There's no better time than to be the one that follows up right as she finishes and her notepad's full of pricing, to be that person that says, hey, Mickey, it's Jim. Hey, what'd you find out there? We'd love to earn your business. I mean, okay, I don't want to. I'm going with you, man. I'm done. This was a heck of an exercise, and thanks a lot for showing me you care enough to check in. So we have to break our mentalities. We know it's true, everybody. So make it automated. Make it happen. Lean on the data. Don't just lean on your fears, which sometimes keep us from doing it. Those are really cool numbers, Austin. really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think, we're going to have, again, another blog post where I'll have a lot of nice graphs here talking about specific data points, findings that we're seeing in it. And then, maybe turning that into a white paper and doing some more expansive research into this topic. But, I have more numbers here, but I think it'd be best if we just,
let's do this. Let's get that out there, and then let's those of you listening, let's email us in, say we want to know more about this. You can find us at todayintrades.com. You can find us on BidClips.com. Send us a message and say, we want to know more. Dive in more. We're building this podcast around you, the workers, around the entrepreneurs, the 1 in 4. They're going to make this business a heck of a business over this next 10 years. And I'm really proud to walk with all of you through that. I know Mickey is as well. And this is what we do. This is what we all do as a career. And so we're excited to begin this journey with you. If some of you are sitting here in this call and you're like, yeah, I like this a lot, and you have a whole pile of follow-ups that have been piled up from just 2 really good years in the service industry for the most of us, don't write off the ones that are 6 months old. Make sure you didn't hear Austin incorrectly, meaning the follow-ups are still 1,000% valid, especially if you've done nothing. It's still worth getting it out there. And worst case scenario, they see your brand. They see a good presentation of who you are. If you want us to help with that, reach out to BidClips. If you want to talk to your marketer or your pay-per-click company, there's a lot of ways to get it done. But as an industry, we have to get that done. We've got to create these jobs and move it forward. So, yeah, awesome. We look forward to that paper, and we look forward to the blog posts. And I'm really excited that we had this topic today. And I'm going to finish my last sip of this Smirnoff ice. And Mickey, if you have any other questions or thoughts, definitely pipe in while I take this disgusting last drink, because now it is warm.
I think I'm good. I'm just want to say thank you to Austin for coming on today and sharing all of your knowledge.
Just go ahead and call it math. You just dropped the best math on us ever.
Yeah, no, it was really it was a really good discussion, I feel like. And I learned a lot, so I'm sure other people that are listening are definitely going to take something from it as well.
Well, as an entrepreneur, it gets me excited. It gives me hope, which we need right now in this time more than ever. It gives me hope that there's going to be calls, there's going to be leads. I want to make sure that myself and our listeners and our users are prepared, that we're prepared to compete, whether that's icing each other with Smirnoff ices or competing with the best product possible. So
I think also not just entrepreneurs, but just people that work in the industry too, because I don't own a business. I work for, one of this company, and, but the way that I am, and I think a lot of people are, is I feel like it's my company and I treat it like it's my company. And I think a lot of, workers do that. So not just for entrepreneurs, but the people that are working and that are making those phone calls as well. I think it's just as important for them.
Yeah, great point. And if you're sitting there right now, you're an ISR, inside sales rep, or a secretary, make some phone calls. Take on this, and the owners and your teammates are going to be more than happy to have the work coming in and customers that are happy. And so, good. We look forward to many more podcasts. Todayintrades.com. Find us, follow us, listen to us, give us feedback, good, bad, and the ugly. Tell us what you want to hear. Thank you to Austin, and thank you to BidClips for making this possible. Just a fantastic company. We aren't just a product to sell. We're a whole culture, and we're there to serve this industry, to serve the trade business. So we'll look forward to next week, and thank you so much, Austin, for joining us.
Yes, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Austin.
Thanks,
bye, everybody.